Every week you do this, man. Every time. Well, the first time. Good evening and welcome back to Battle of the Nations Total Recall. We are joined this week by two true gentlemen of the sport, Brad Schaive from the United States and Artem Berehovyi, which I'm sure I've mispronounced, from Ukraine. I do apologize. They are two of the most impossible to pronounce surnames, for me anyway. Guys, it is wonderful to see you here. How are you getting on in this coronavirus period? Artem?
It's right now it's I would say normal. Okay, in Ukraine we have the first phase how we can finish the lockdown. It's like the first step when people started some public transport availability, some shops and grocery shops as well opening, and thanks God we don't have such a huge number of affected people. I believe that quarantine was in time, and we will see how it goes, but starting with slow steps, going to normal life.
Sure thing. Same to you, Brad. How are things over there?
They're good now. They're good. You know, I'm in Illinois, so it's one of the first states that actually went down into lockdown in early March. For me, it's been a little different from a lot of families because my wife's had 2 transplants. She's had a liver transplant and a kidney transplant. So we're in that high risk group. So everything's got to be different for us. You know, every piece of groceries that's brought in has got to be wiped down with Clorox wipes. Everything's got to be, always in a mask and gloves. So we're on the extreme edge of what some people think is ridiculous, but I don't really care. It's all about her. So what we have to do is just, do what we do until this is gone. And it's normal life. I've been blessed to be in an industry that's essential. So construction in Illinois has been essential. So everybody's working, but it's very surreal when you go to a grocery store and people are looking at you like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? And it's just a weird, strange time.
Sure. How about training, Artem? I suppose at the moment, Taurus have, and of course the Team Ukraine have no training scheme at the moment. How long do you think it will be before you can train together again?
Actually, we continue our training together as a Taurus club, but we was doing it online. With the initiative of our captain, Valery Wozniuk, we arrange 3 times per week online training for most important physical exercises with the stuff that we have at home. And then we supply most of our fighters with some kettlebells and some heavy equipment just to power up our training process. And starting from Monday, we will return to our joint training on the street, in the park or some stadium. Of course, everyone will be in mask, but we will include some running, some burpees, of course. So some more exercises focusing that we can do on the street, in the air. And, it was a really cool thing that today, first time for the last 3 months, I have beat the Makiwara with my new falchion. And it was really fascinating for me. I so missed was part of the training.
Excellent. How about you, Brad? I mean, how are you keeping in shape? I imagine there's no team trainings or anything like that. Are you staying in shape? Do you have a training program?
Yeah, we got a row machine. So basically working on cardio and, running, things like that you can do. The gyms here have been closed for a very long time. And, Artem talks about kettlebells. A kettlebell right now in this state would go for more money than you could come up with. The kettlebell, it's very weird. I called a buddy of mine that owns a fitness company that sells everything. When I called him, he just started giggling. He said kettlebells have been gone, benches, everything had been gone already for 30 days. When I called early. So, people, what has become the trend now is a home gym. I spent most of my money on armor instead of a home gym. I'll have to flip that someday. But it has been good because, during the pandemic, I get new helmets arriving, so it isn't too bad.
But I mean, okay. Before we start on the questions, I got to ask this, Brad. How many sets of armor have you had? Because every time you come to Battle of the Nations, there's something beautiful and something new.
Well, I'd like to know if Melissa's actually watching this currently before I answer that.
I recall 4 different sets.
4 as well, yeah.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is I always took it as a personal challenge. Battle of Nations has always been such a huge part of my life since we very first went to Warsaw. It's always kind of been, for me, something that if you're going to go to this, it's a Super Bowl, it's a World Series. It is the epitome of the sport. And so I always thought there was an appropriate thing to do, to be in a harness that showed how serious it was to me. And a lot of people thought that was, you always switch an armor for you're looking for something else. I didn't see it that way. I always wanted to take whatever I could to the level that I could reach. So when I got there, people recognized the effort and the expense, but the honor that I'm showing to the sport. And I think it's important. I think that I couldn't imagine going to the biggest show in the world for this sport in something that's, that looks like I've been using it for 2 years. The idea, and I get if you can't afford it, I get that. But to tell you the truth, I mean, it's all in what you put as priority. And this has always been a priority for me since the first year I went.
Sure thing. Well, it's certainly, we'll be talking more about that. And in fact, everybody, as you are following the YouTube and Facebook channels, please ask all the questions you have to Brad and Artem. Anything goes. There are no limits to the questions. They can be as embarrassing as you like, as detailed as you want. We want the questions from you because these guys, we talk about all of their memories from Battle of the Nations. So keep those questions coming in. Okay. Well, let's start at the beginnings of it. Artem, tell us about your first experience at Battle of the Nations.
It's interesting that my first experience of the Battle of the Nation was initially the first Battle of the Nations in 2010 in beautiful Ukrainian fortress Khotin in the Carpathian Mountains. And one of the best memories from those times that the place where the fortress located, where the Battle of the Nation was held, it's really fascinating. It's so masterpiece because there is the river Dniester there that flows between the mountains, and the Khotin fortress, it's one of the best Ukrainian fortresses from the Middle Ages. It was used for many historical movies, start like Taras Bulba, one of the major Cossacks hero in Ukraine. And being in that place itself was really the inspiring for us, like the nights in the beautiful fortress. And it's the first memory. And second memory is that we first time faced with 4 and actually 5 different nations. There was 4 teams in that championship, but nations, if I'm not mistaken, were 5, because within Polish team there was the Lithuanian team, if I'm not mistaken, itself. Yeah. And meet different fighters from different countries with different fighting style. It was really something new for us, and it was the game changer for all our sport and historical fans. And at the time, after the first Battle of the Nation, everything changed.
Mm-hmm. And there were quite a lot of people who were at Khotin in that first year in the grandstands. Is that correct?
Do you mean the fighters or
no, the audience, the public?
Audience. If I'm not mistaken, it was from 5,000 to 10,000 of spectators there. Mm.
Very impressive for the first time they did it. Yeah. Brad, how about you? When was the first time you attended Battle of the Nations? And tell us about your experiences.
2012, Warsaw, Poland, Fort Bema. And it was amazing. And talking about the crowd, so I don't forget it, that was Fort Bema was down in like a bowl, and where they had all the bunkers for the ammunition, and around it was hills. All of the hills were full of people. All the stands were full of people. It was unbelievable, truly unbelievable. It was standing room only. But, that was our first Battle of Nations, and none of us knew what we were getting into. None of us were prepared for what we were getting into. And, you know, the armor, the weapons, the different things. Whew, it was a learning experience. You know, you go out there and you have a perception of what it's going to be. You know, many of the people that went had been in the SCA and doing different things. So they were used to wearing armor, but not to the level that it takes for protection in this sport. And so when we got there and saw the level of competition, it was truly unbelievable. You know, I always tell that funny story where, and I think this was on purpose. They had the United States team under this tent right next to us as a triage where all the guys are coming for the medical care. And I was like, I think somebody thought that out. And so they're coming in for the medical care, you know, and they're bringing in. And the first 3 or 4 fights were just, it was unbelievable. Very, very, very hard fights. 2 or 3 guys that took out on backboards, neck brace, the whole thing. And we're just sitting there. You got to remember, we'd never been in one of these except for our own practices. And Anthony Lynch, who's just a monster. I'm sure you remember Anthony. He's just a giant. So he's the biggest of us all. And he's sitting there. We're under the tent. Our visors are down. You know, we're all ready. And they take the third guy past into the ambulance, and off he goes. And everybody's sitting there dead quiet. Anthony Lynch goes, "Boys, I think we might have made a mistake." I'll never forget it. I'll tell you another one. Rob Roach, and you remember Rob Roach travels with me all over the world, just like Scott Frappier. Rob Roach had been eating, and if you know, Fort Bema in 2012, it was like a heat wave. It was the craziest, weirdest thing. We're going to Europe, dressed warm. We get there, and it was so hot. It was unbelievable. It was setting records. So Rob's sitting next to us. We have a fight, a couple fights that come out. That morning, out comes the breakfast, into the visor, into the helmet. And I'll never forget, I look over and Rob goes, "My debut as an international swordsman, and I puke in my helmet."
Oh,
no. We still talk about that. It's hilarious.
Excellent.
We actually met with you, Brett, on that Battle of the Nation in Warsaw. And if you don't mind, I will share one funny story how actually I recognize who is Brett Schaive. On that Battle of the Nation, I was with my best friend, and it's also the friend of Brett. It's Igor Milenchuk. We started our journey in the HMB sport together. And it was the first 21 versus 21 fight between Ukraine and the United States. And the whole United States team was kind of like surprise for us. We didn't know what to expect from them. And there are some big guys there. At that time, I quite tall, like 6 feet and several inches, 1 meter 90 centimeters. I do not know in the food system how many inches there. But when I saw the Anthony Lynch, the guy who twice, like 2 heads upper than me and wider as well, we were pretty interested and intrigued. What will we expect from them? And we have charged the initial line and run towards to the US guys team. And Igor, my friend, he was on the same position where Brett stood with his battle axe. And when Brett tried to hit Igor, Igor just moved forward to the Brett, so the distance was broke. And Igor tried to make some grappling in the clinch with him. And what did Brett? Brett just grabbed the Igor and pulled him from the ground. So it was the first time in our sport when we see that guy who weighed like 85 kilos within like 35 kilos armor will just grab and throw back from the ground. I would be honest and say that Igor, he also grabbed the Brett and they fall down together, but it was really fascinating. And after the fight, the Brett told us, "Hi, he is your fly boy," yeah. Fly boy. Yeah. And from that time, we 3 of us, we just become good friends.
Good friends. Ever since that day. Good friends. Yeah, I'll tell you the backstory to that. The backstory is part of my gauntlet had pulled off. I was using a 2-stage gauntlet, and I went over to the fence, and I remembered they said, if anything happens, take a knee, do these different things. So I go over, and the Russian coach is there. And I said, hey, look, it's gone. He goes, fight. I turned around, and that's when Igor charged me, and I picked him up. Yeah.
Lost Brad there. We'll get him back in a minute. There he is. Excellent. Okay. Tell us about your best experience. Which for you, on a personal level, has been the most important or significant or simply the best Battle of the Nations? Artem.
Oh, it's a really difficult question for me because I have been for all the Battle of the Nation, and all of them were really important for me and good. I would select the different categories. So in the overall, the best Battle of the Nation, for me, it's of course the Barcelona 2017, when Ukraine first time won the gold medals in the Royal category.
Yeah.
And the location of the Arena Monumental itself, it was like the Coliseum, and it was probably the dream of all armored fighter to fight sometime in Coliseum. But other different Battle of the Nation were also pretty good. For example, in Trogir in Croatia, there was so beautiful location for the camp near the seaside. So it was like the best festival of the Battle of the Nation. And of course, in Serbia, the 10th of Battle of the Nation, that was like anniversary, for the 10 years. It was the biggest one, the most good from the organizational standpoint. The stream, if I'm not mistaken, six languages for streaming from that, and 3 lists, and of course 150 versus 150 was like the cherry on the cake for that Battle of the Nation.
Excellent. How about you, Brad?
I'd say Prague. I thought Prague was really, really special. Obviously, take Prague, but you got to minus the full plate tournament, right? Which is like I was born for that, and the 150. I'll get to that. But let's just talk about the location. It was, I was very impressed with Prague just because the flats where we were staying, or the villas, were at the base of the castle. You walked right up to the fight, you walked back to the restaurants. The first day in Prague, when I flew in and looked, I had never seen that many vendors at a event. You could literally go to that event in civilian clothes and leave in a full harness and full 14th century clothes if you chose. It was amazing. The opportunity there, and a lot of you guys in Europe don't recognize what that is to us. We see goods there. It's almost like historical for us, because you go to a different land and you can get goods that you can't get back home. And that's how we are with these things. You can actually get the helmets and the gauntlets and try stuff on, spend the money and bring it back. Not only that, but the clothes. It was very impressive. The Prague event, because of the way it was set up and it was all enclosed and you walk through a tunnel, I'd say that walk in there was probably the most stunning feeling that I've ever had when it came to Battle Nations, because it was so real. They would keep it closed. You would hear the crowd going crazy. And it's like, okay, for those who are about to die, salute. You know what I mean? You're getting ready to walk in. It's like, well, here it goes one way or another, boys. So I'll never forget that. I just thought that was a very special location.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, we've already got some questions coming in, but before we get to those, we're just some more continuations of the development of Battle of the Nations. Last year in Smederevo in Serbia, we saw a lot of new categories, as they are every year, and we actually changed the format of the Royal categories. This time now we have the 12 versus 12 and the 30 versus 30. What do you think of this change, Artem? To both of you. First, Artem. Do you think this is a good change? Do you like, or did you prefer the 21 versus 21? How do you see this?
I would say that more categories, it's always great. More battles for the god of battles. And it's good that we have additional category like 12 versus 12. 30 versus 30, it's almost the same like 21 versus 21. However, this category brings more importance and responsibility for the national team, because you have really slow reserve of the fighters who small reserve of the fighters who you can change between the fights. So you need to train the whole national team and have the really good first scale team that can win a couple of fights without any changes. And this year it was really for us one of the main tasks for us, and we prepare for 30 versus 30. Probably it was our main focus for the Serbia Battle of the Nations, and I just open to see how these categories will develop further, and we'll be glad to participate in all of them.
How about you, Brad? How do you feel about the new categories?
I think they're amazing. I think it's the future. As there's more teams with 5 versus 5 teams, and I think that the 5s have changed since 2012. You know, you'll see a 5 now where there's not a lot of weapon strikes. There's a lot of grappling. And I think that with that and with the development of different, you know, tournaments, Prime and Dynamo, different things, I think that's really where the 5s are going to end up being, where they're showcased. And my hope is BOTN's where we showcase the mass battles and the large events. And, you know, let's do a whole day of 150s. Let's, you know, I think that the 12s, the 30s, the 150s, I think that's a future. I think that that is a game changer. Whoever came up with the 150 versus 150 should get the Nobel Peace Prize, because it's keeps all of us in line now. You know what I mean? So it's just, it is a change to the sport that I think was transformational. I think that you see individuals that say, well, you know, I'm not really excited about going and doing a 5 versus 5 because, well, look at us. We're not all as young as Artem. You know what I mean? So we can go and, you know, the reality of it is the American team's a lot older than everybody else out there. But you can go out and swing a halberd, swing a pole axe, get in those 30s, get in those 12s, get in that 150, and represent your country and your teammates and do well at it. And I think the 5 has just changed over the years. I think it's drastically changed, and I think it's a different game now, and it's very elite for a very specific goal set.
I would like to add to the Brad opinion, and I fully agree with him, that from the general spectacular's view, I believe that mass category is more good for the viewing rather than the 5 versus 5, because within current trends for the top teams, of course, there is a lot of grappling near the list, and it's not so spectacular for the audience, for the streaming. 2 big guys in armor just to have some clinch near the list, and it can be for 5-6 minutes. And there is really big responsibility for small mistake in 5 versus 5. Within the mass battles, we have the more visibility for the tactics. We have the shield lines, we have the halberd lines, the second line. We have some running guys who just go through the lines. And I believe for the streaming, for the mass audience, it will be more representation of the medieval battle, how it was in the past. So I fully support the development of these categories, especially in the Battle of the Nations. It's like the Olympic Games or the World Championship. And 5 versus 5, it's the best categories for Bugurt Prime or for Dynamo Cup or for Koenig Street and other good tournaments.
Yeah, in answer to your question, Brad, it was Anton Trubnikov's idea to do the mass battle, but his and I have to confess, actually, it was the idea, the proposal was presented at one of the General Assemblies in Milan in 2016, and his original idea was to have 300 versus 300. And I'm a practical person, and I was sitting there, and all these things just started giving me a headache, like the marshals, the streaming, cameras, coordination of the teams, and all these things. So I have to confess that I was against the idea immediately. I was totally against the idea. But of course, like whittling it down a bit to 150 is I mean, 300 again, and also for a question of space. I mean, how do you do it? But it's turned out to be the talking point, and it was a huge task last year to coordinate all the, of course, the camera work and everything in the stream. But the media guys are sub-professionals, and they did an amazing job. So even via the live stream, I think they really captured some of the emotion of that whole battle. And all the fighters are talking about it. All the fighters are talking about wanting to do it again. So that was, I think, one of the successes, and it's certainly something, as Artem said, for the audience, for the public. That's what people want to see. There is a lot of excitement about it. But as a fighter, I mean, this was not a 2-minute round of 5 versus 5 Bohurts. It was going on for a long time. What do you tell us a little bit about how it was when you were in the brawl there, in the fight of 150 versus 150? Brad.
So, I did an interview the other day, and I was talking about it, and I had my pole axe and swinging. There's a Russian fighter. We were up against the Russians, and I hit him in the face 10, 12, 15 times. And his mail started here, and by the end of it, his mail was here. And I'm looking. I'm like, yeah, I'm really doing something. And he looks over and smiles right at me. I was like, okay, all of my it just flew right out of me. I'm like, all right, I just wasted my time. Yeah, I'll never forget. I told that story that night because I'm going to tell you something. It was very disheartening to hit someone as hard as you can. I mean, I'm coming out of my shoes when I swing. And he just kind of looks over and gives me a grin like, yeah, I know you're there. It's pretty amazing. But, the thing about it is, it's funny. So I was reading a book about Agincourt, and they were talking about, they would use the fallen knights as kind of a rampart. You would stand behind them, and the people coming at you would have to step over them and give you an opportunity. So it's kind of like an obstacle. And I'll never forget, as we were getting pushed back, as Russia was pushing us back, I'm stepping over all of these fallen fighters. So I stopped after there's like 4 fighters in armor laying there. So I stopped on the other side of them, and there was like 3 or 4 Russian fighters looking at me. And the funny thing is, they walked up to it, looked at him, and stopped and looked at me. I was like, oh, I guess they read the same book I did, because they wouldn't move. Yeah, they just went around him. I was like, that's not how this is supposed to be.
Excellent. Artem, how was it for you as a fighter?
It was fascinating, honestly. The initial view, how you can see the 5 banners of 50 fighters inside, and our opponents were in 5 squares, like maniples in Rome army. And our plan was, within our captain, battle captain, Elias Pishutin, he divided us into small parties for 15 fighters in each. And the main task for us was to fill all the holes in our big line of our party and to be in the most critical moments of the fights. And in my responsibility and my guys from our team as well, we will stand in the center and support the China and Australia team. And we faced first time with the English banner. And I recall that Ilya Dragan from Moldova was in the English banner as well. We support them with the halberds because most of the China guys and Australia, they had the shields. And the English banners start to push us. Our lines go back. We support them. And in one time, I just appeared that I was staying and hitting like the bread with my big halberd, the guys, and then I just turned back and see that the shield wall of China guys stand behind me, and I'm a halberd. A couple of our guys stand in the front of them. I thought, oh, something wrong. We should change. It's the bad tactics. Yeah, and another funny moment was from that battle. We go through the charge just to break the lines. I and my good friend from Taurus, Andrei Davidov, we just charge through the lines and we go through them. And I was just behind the whole lines of the parties, and there was the choice for me. I could run across the whole of the field and try just to capture one of the opponent's banners, and in that time I noticed that the right flank, where was the main Russian banner, there was a really difficult time for our guys. The Polish and Ukrainian guys fight with them. And there was like the decision moment for me. Should I run across the field and try to capture the barn by myself? Or should I try to assist my guys? And I just recall that the only warrior on the field is not the army, and decided to support our guys. And in the time, I know it's also the 5 Russian fighters who just charged to capture me. So I just ran in across the flank and joined our party as well. But next time, I believe I will try my fortune and run across the whole field, try to capture the banner.
Fantastic. Okay. All right. We'll get back to some Battle of the Nations memories in just a moment. Time now for some questions from the stream. First of all, everyone's good friend, Grigory Chaplutski, has a question. What are the plans for the remaining part of the season, Brad?
The remaining part of the season?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, basically what we're doing is just waiting to see what opens up. We're going to start, we were having a conversation last night about putting together somewhere close to where I live, either in Illinois or Kentucky or one of the places, a full plate tournament to try and get individuals ready for that, because that's something that, you know, that is a completely different situation where, you know, you knew that I was in the full plate because I'm always in full plate. So for me, it wasn't a big transition. But, you know, for a lot of individuals who I've seen over the last couple of years, the armor changed. It was heavy armor, and then, okay, this isn't going to kill me. Light armor, grappling, movement, titanium, and all the different things. You know, titanium's great, and those things are awesome until somebody's holding you on the rail and people like me and him are swinging. So, you know, but I think what we're doing right now is waiting for things to open up stateside, and then people are going to start getting together, because there was a whole lot of tournaments that got canceled, a whole lot of training got canceled. And the truth is, the United States is so big, the teams are so spread out. Even just one club like Black Swan that I fight in is spread out. You know, Chicago's 3 hours from here. And you know, St. Louis is an hour and 45 minutes. You've got people all in these different areas. It's tough to get people together. I wish we were closer, like Europe, where everybody was close, so you could do more team training. It's really rough to do. So what happens is you have to have special events that everybody drives to. And I think that if this opens up, which I'm hoping that it does in the next 30 days or faster, we can get back to wearing harness and get ready for it.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Artem? What are the plans for the remainder of the season?
Of course, we will participate in those tournaments that we will be able to join. Currently, there is some announcement of restoring tournaments inside the Ukraine, and we will definitely take part in them. Mm-hmm. However, for the all Bugurt League tournaments, I believe it will be hard because country borders, national borders still close, and how we can join to our international tournaments, it's uncertainly fast. So I believe the major goal for us, the major target for the last of the season will be start the preparation for the Battle of the Nation 2021. So we will do our best. We need to elect the new captain for the national team. We need to figure out how to make the good international or national election tournament. And maybe we will join it to the Bugurt League, like one maybe master tournament as well. We will see. But definitely, I'm not sure that within the current COVID crisis, the Bugurt Prime will remain it because it's the half of the season already passed. So the major macro target for us will be Battle of the Nations next.
Sure thing. Okay. Got a few more questions here to get through. Dennis Yetmar writes, hey people, I'm a huge fan of the sport. I support the Danes and the Danish teams. Where do you think the Danes are rated amongst the teams in the sport?
The best partiers?
Huh?
The best partiers?
The best partiers.
I can tell you. Go ahead, Artem. Go ahead.
I just small comment that in 2012 they were definitely the best parties, but right now they're not just the best parties, but also the great European fighters. And I know that the Brotherhood Club, their team last year in the Bogurt Prime and Battle of the Nations, they showed really good result.
They're into some. Denmark has suffered a number of difficulties. Not problems, but challenges, because, of course, the Brotherhood team, it doesn't exist. Then it became BSK last week, of course. Matthias Søjborg was online with us, and he was talking about the difficulties that they have in Denmark to really unite their team. And I think everybody really wants to see them back as soon as possible, because they've got some really great talent, some amazing fighters. The difficulties they face, the challenges they face, are just coordinating themselves. And it's such a shame when, in a sport like this, when people have the level of sportsmanship, it's damaged, let's say, by an inability to coordinate and to organize and to manage these things, as Matthias Søjborg was telling us last time.
Well, the thing about that team too is you just don't meet better people. Not only do they fight with, I mean, they live this. I mean, they really, truly do. You know, Matthias and his brother, they embody the Norse lifestyle. They're all about it. They take it to heart. And, you know, I think that when I met them, and I've been dear friends with them ever since, their family, their mother, I think that what they do is they embody what this sport is supposed to be. So you come off the field smiling, you go on the field scowling, you come off the field smiling. And, you know, I think that the Danish team has always been my favorite team, honestly, because of when they party like it's the end of the world. And when they fight, they do the same thing. And so it's, and I assume that's probably pretty historical for their lineage. So it would have been a good time to see that. So yeah, they're pretty amazing. I have nothing but love for them.
Okay, then let's move on to some more fan questions. So, difficult question here. Interesting question from Alexander Balubzic. How bad were some of your injuries during battle, if you had any? So have any of you suffered any injuries during the fights?
Yes. I basically, when we were fighting in France, somebody got a weapon on the field that was came to a point, one of the falchions for a while that came down. Remember those? And it went right through, gave me about a 2-inch deep puncture wound, chipped the bone. Yeah, it's just, and if you look at the video and stop at the video and go to the picture, it's literally the falchion comes straight down to a point. I mean, you know, it is what it is, but I think injuries are part of this. It's just like anything else, any other sport. I think that the issue, and what I try and teach new fighters, is everybody has an opinion of, I'm going to lighten this up, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. And that's great if you're running. You know, if you're one of those guys that's 5'10" and you're 100 mile an hour and you're running shield punching everybody, hey, God bless you. I hate you, but God bless you. But the problem with that is when you can't run anymore, and then the two guys come over that look like me and Artem carrying the pole axes, shame on you. And so I think that's a lot of the times that's what happens is, you know, their perception of what it's going to be, even on a 5. I've seen a 5 before. You're tied up on the rail and guys are just literally beating the taste out of you. And so, you know, I think that sometimes injuries are caused by individuals trying to, you know, make do or not spend money or go super light. And like, it's kind of like the comment I made about wearing your harness for 2 or 3 or 4 years. You know, these things are tools and they wear out. This, this isn't a Mercedes you buy and drive till the day you die. It's used up and it's worn out and it starts to get beat up. And I've seen that. I've seen helmets fail. I've seen things, the weapons break, the helmets fail, the gauntlets fail, broken hands. It's part of the sport. But I think it's also our duty to try and mitigate that by being an appropriate harness.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Artem? Have you faced any injuries?
We're in combat sport, of course. The injuries goes along our sport way. But that phrase, everything that doesn't kill us makes us just stronger. Sure. And all my injuries, they just taught me how I should improve my armor, how I should improve my protection, my battle skills. I recall that in my early years of fighting, in my first pro fight, I get the falchion handle inside my visor, and it was the cut of my eyebrow, and I was just noticing that, I lose my eye. But thanks God, and from that time I just changed the visor of my helmet, and now my face and eyes are protected well. In another pro fight, it was like the broken finger on my leg. So after that fight, I just always put the sabatons. So, the use, I would say use within the Brad conversation, you consider me like the young guy, but within this sport, I would be like called more like veteran because almost 14 years already. So you faced with the injuries in the early stages because you have lack of the experience how to make the better armor for you that fits your conditions, experience how to fight with the safety for your health and with efficiency for the battle. And thanks God that right now we have like the techniques, the methodics, how to learn and teach HMB. And I know that in Russia it's the HMB schools even. It's good. So the experienced fighters, they share the experience that they get through a lot of battles, through a lot of injuries with the young generation. It's great. So everything that doesn't kill us makes us just stronger.
Mm-hmm. I always love the Eastern European. It's like, does not kill, he's good. Whereas we're like, hey, this sucks.
It was the funny story from my school years. The differences inside the languages. There is how the Americans say, you need to do this or die. And how the Russians or Ukrainians or post-Soviet people, how they say it, you need, you die, but do it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you'll die anyway, but do it, of course. Okay. Question here from Ulrich Scheunemann, who asks, what is the most important thing in Bohors? Is it tactics or to physically overpower the opponent?
I can answer shortly that
go ahead,
you cannot resolve any tactics without physical conditions. The tactics, the strategy, they will be effective, they will work if you have appropriate physical conditions and battle skills.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in my opinion, I have seen individuals who thought this sport was A and they found out that it was B. They've got appropriate harness, they've trained, their cardio is phenomenal, they've done all these things. They get on a plane, they get to Prague, they get in the field against 21 people or 30 people now, and they realize mentally, I shouldn't be here. And I've seen it. And I've seen guys who thought it was one thing, they show up thinking it's apples, and somebody hands them an orange. And so, in my opinion, this sport is big mentally. You have to know that you can get on the field with the best in the world. You can do it safely, because the moment in this sport where it takes over and you literally think, I might not make it out of here. Because, let's be honest, a lot of guys diminish this. And there's like, well, there's no risk. There's no big deal. It is a big deal. You get shot in the back of the neck with a halberd, it's going to be a big deal for you. In my experiences, I've put a couple guys in the emergency room, and it was horrible. It was terrible. It was an armor failure or certain things happened. But I've also made some of my closest friends from that. around the world. The fact is that you have to mentally be prepared for this sport. You have to know I can go out there, I can compete safely, I can do well, and the people around me are going to protect me, but I need to compete at a high level, which means I have to let all that go and I got to get down. And I think that for me, I have seen individuals, you know, we did some training and some MMA guys came out and who had pro fights. They came out, put on a helmet, fought for 4 minutes, took it off, said, don't ever call me again because you guys are nuts.
I believe you need to have the spirit of the warrior to be in
Yes,
the sport
correct.
for a long period of the time and fight. Because there are a lot of different people who stay in the sport but not on the fighter's role. They probably go to the marshals, they maybe stay within the camp. They like the spirit of the festival, spirit of the medieval festival and medieval ages. But not all guys, they go through the whole period by fighting. And it's okay. It's the life. It's not who's bad, who good. It's life, and everyone select what fits their spirit, their goals for the life. Somebody can call us mad, but still, I believe that we were born as fighters, as warriors. And just the last phrase, you know, my good friend Grigory Chaplowski, who I believe watching this stream as he asks the question, he has a really favorite phrase. If somebody depressed within our sport, he just said, "Come on, you are the warrior. Calm down and go fight." So just be a warrior.
Excellent. Okay. Speaking of our good friend Grigory Chaplowski, and in fact, we've got a couple of jokers here. One by the name of Greg Thomas. And both these guys have decided to be comedians about this and started talking about food. So Greg asks, what do you eat to get so big?
He's talking to you, Artem.
It says here, I have a question for Brad. So
yeah, no, I know, Greg. He meant that for Artem.
Okay.
Yeah. So no. First of all, I'll tell you. You know, it's funny because, like, just talking about my good friend Artem, I remember when I saw him and Igor at the first thing. It looked like two of my young son, right? So I see him and Matthias. When I see him and his brother, when I first met them, they were so young, and so were you, Artem. They were so young. I thought, man, I probably shouldn't be here. I mean, you know, it's if this is what's going on here, I'm in serious trouble. But, you know, I think that the difference is some of us, we train to a specific skill set. We eat and train to put on a certain physique to do a certain skill set. I'm never going to be one of those guys that's running around with the shield and doing the heavy grappling. It's just not my forte, not really my thing. My thing is, it's always just been pole axe, swing, like it's the last time you're ever going to get to do it. And, you know, that's kind of how we train for the people to do what I do. And then, you know, people train and do different things for, like, the flankers and the guys that are running around just blasting guys off their feet with the punch shields. And, you know, and then I guess also that's one of the things about the European teams. If you take Ukraine, you take Russia, that's why. They are so diverse in all of those skills. You could take one of those Russians and one of the Ukrainians, give them anything, and they're still going to be deadly. And it's because they train that way and they train so much more. And it's, you know, one of the things I've seen, though, I remember going to these tournaments and you'd see the draw and you'd be like, okay, we're good here. We're good here. This is going to be a tough one. We're good here. Now, I don't care what country you draw, you got to fight. I don't care who it is, you got a fight on your hands. The level has exploded. And so, you know, it used to be when you'd see those balls come out, when we were all watching those draws, we're all sending each other messages. Hey, man, we're gonna do good. We're gonna do good. Them days are gone, man. Now, I don't care who you draw, what country, you better be wired tight because they're going to be coming. And I've seen people go into these thinking, no, I'm looking at what bracket I'm going to be in, and they never get out of that bracket because they get beat. And so, you know, I think that training in this is, and like what Greg was talking about, your diet and different things, I think that if you don't train hard for this, shame on you. You got to train your mind, but you got to train your body too, because it's going to be rough. And I got to tell you, when I first started this, you did your fives and you did your 21s, and they'd be like, you got fives, and you go out and you have a long bout of fives, and you come out and they go, okay, we're getting ready for 21s. And you're like, how did I sign up for both 21s and fives? I should have thought this out. So it's kind of like when I played high school football, the schools who didn't have a lot of people, you went both ways. You did offense and defense. And the good schools, you went one way. And I just kind of thought about that in Poland. I'm like, yeah, I should have signed up just for defense.
Excellent. Okay. So then on the same theme as that, still talking about food there, the comedian Grigory Chaplutski, or maybe Artem, you can answer this one. And you can answer this how you want. Maybe he's trying to pick a fight here. I don't know. He says, guys, next question. Just be honest. So how much extra kilos have you put on during lockdown? Be honest, fat boys. He called you fat boys. It's right here, fat boys.
Yeah.
Artem,
it's because he just jealous because Grigory Chaplutski is battle Drish.
Drish. You can't say Drish on here. We said no bad language. You've broken it now. Don't worry, we'll explain it later, Brad.
In translation in English, it's just skinny boy.
Kind of, yeah, but it depends how you use it. Okay, so Grigory is now the Drish of the Ukraine. Good to know.
It's funny. My wife always says that you got the you go to college in the U.S. You go to college and say you put on the freshman 15, right? Well, we call it now the COVID 15 because everybody's like locked up in the house, getting down and eating, watching Netflix and eating cake. So the good thing is a row machine will take care of that. I haven't gained any weight by the grace of God, because the worst thing is when you put your harness on and you got to put more notches. That should tell you something's going wrong.
Okay then, guys. Now it is that time for the Golden Halberd quiz. Okay, so what happens with this quiz is that we've got questions here. We've done this quiz twice so far. The first week with the first time with Jonas Fraser of Germany against Bryce Lightbody. Bryce got 6 questions correct. Last time with Matthias Soyborg against Artyom Savanovich of Russia was absolutely pathetic. They both got 3 each. Okay, so you can't do too badly. The way it works, okay, you'll have 5 seconds to answer each question. Don't shout out the answer. Keep the answer and I'll ask you for it, okay? Now, the person who gets the point, when you have a question about statistics or numbers, then it's the person who, of course, is closest to the exact figure, okay? So, some of them will be statistic questions, other will be some quite quirky questions. So, question number 1. How many languages was Battle of the Nations 2019 in Smederevo broadcast across the live stream? How many languages? Okay, you both look really, really confused there. Okay, Brad,
no, I'm ready.
Do you think it is?
I would say 4. I would say 4 because I would say 4.
6.
What were the languages then, Brad?
I would say Chinese. I know there was English. I would say Russian, and if I remember correctly, I think there was one more. So I'd say 4. Yeah.
Artyom, what were the languages?
I know for sure it was Russian, Ukrainian, English, Chinese, and maybe French language as well, and Germany. Spanish as well. Spanish should be.
Very good. Artyom gets the points. It was 6 languages. Of course, the languages broadcast at the event, of course, were the English, Russian, Chinese, and Ukrainian. And there were streams going off in French and Spanish, of course, done from Argentina. What does this say to you guys? This is one of the quiz questions. What does that tell you about the fan base of Battle of the Nations and HMB in general? Brad?
I think it's huge. I think that the sport has grown and the live feed is to a quality that allows that. Because I remember getting onto it and be like, well, this is hard to watch. I'd still watch because I knew everybody and I was looking for specific things, or I'd come back to the States and watch the fights. The quality now is something that I know that if you talk to people back home, you get back to your flat, you're beat up and you're cleaning your armor, and they're hitting you on Facebook going, hey, I just watched this. I watched this. They're hearing the conversations. They know what's going on. It's like being there. I think that the fan base worldwide has exploded, and I think it's going to continue to, especially like the 150 and some of those bigger, larger battles, like Artem said. That's just going to bring even more people on. You know, if you can turn on, just say you turn on, you know, YouTube or HMB, you put it on, you start looking, you see, you know, 10 guys, or you see 300. I mean, who's going to turn that off? They're going to watch that until it stops.
Sure thing. Okay, let's go to question 2 of the quiz then. Okay. How many people were allegedly sent to hospital on day 1 of Battle of the Nations 2018 in Santa Severa? How many people were allegedly taken to hospital on day 1 of Battle of the Nations in Santa Severa?
Allegedly, I would say 40.
Artem?
17.
85. So Artem gets a point here. It was released in news that 85 people had been taken to hospital, or they'd been hospitalized due to injury. But the reality was something quite different. Of course, the way that the media had, you know, just blown it up out of all reasonable proportions and such like that. The thing is, of course, there are certain different legal procedures in Italy whereby they couldn't take any, they had to take all these precautions, because of course there are huge insurance difficulties if somebody is not seen. However, that was the year that we had the team of medics, the emergency medics, at the list. How do you feel about the security of the sport now that we have that wonderful team of Russian medics by the list in the major tournaments? Artem?
I believe it's good enough because, as on previous stream, Artem Berehovyi and Matthias Osberg discussed it. These medics, they know exactly what dangerous injury we can get from our sport. They respectfully took our armor, otherwise other can cut our belts, vice versa. And I believe that having the specifically focused medics within the most of competitions will prevent a lot of inefficient actions and to just provide the better service to the fighters.
Sure thing. Anything to add to that, Brad?
No, I feel the same way. I think it gives a level of comfortability. You know, they're there. They know the sport. They know the injuries. If you look at the list of injuries, it kind of follows the same line, you know, at all of these, because there's certain things that happen that are going to cause these injuries. And I think grappling is going to add to some of those in certain extremities, knees and things like that. But I think it's a big deal to be able to look and see qualified medical personnel. And I think it alleviates a lot of the concern because, you know, I remember years and years ago, the ambulance was there and you're waiting for an ambulance to arrive. Now it just seems like it's immediate care. They take care of you. And I think it makes everybody feel more comfortable with it.
Sure thing. It's great also that, I mean, one of the best investments that was made was to have that emergency team. It's also really important to have a team which follows the sport, which is regularly there, so they know what to expect, and their responses are extremely fast. So they really are an asset to the sport and the development of the sport. This also means that less time is lost if there is an injury, people are taken out straight away. The medics, they know what to do. So it's just made it really reassuring for everybody. And of course, it's made the action continue at a lot faster rate. Okay, then let's go to the next question. Brad, you're 2-0 down. You got some catching up to do here, my man.
He's only been out of school for 2 years. How am I supposed to
All right, then. Okay. Well, here's one you might get, though. Good luck with this one. How many pole arms were broken at Battle of the Nations 2017 in Barcelona? Artyom, give us a number.
I would say 100, because I know that just Ukrainian team, before the final fight, we have broken the 2/3 of all our halberds, and US team, they just provide us like the assistance with the halberds before the final battle. So comparing to the all teams and all days, I would say like 100.
Brad, what do you think?
And just so you know, the ones we gave you were the lightest ones. Well, if he said 100, I'll say 101.
Brad. Why did you do it? If you had gone 99, okay. The exact figure, unfortunately, is unknown, but recorded broken halberds were 84. Okay. The thing is, it's part and parcel of the course. Unfortunately, same as armor, like weapons break. Okay. How does it feel in that moment when you're in the list and your weapon breaks or you have a weapon failure? Then, of course, you've got that urgency of going back to retrieve a separate weapon. How does it feel in that moment, guys?
Well, there's a video. One of our guys made a video of when we were fighting in Prague, and I put my axe in that French fighter's helm, and I had to go back. And at that, the funny thing is that was the second axe. I broke one over his helmet already. This guy was like a fortress. And then they told me later they called him the Stone. But it depends on the time. It depends on the time of the fight. If you break your weapon in the beginning of the fight when the lines are still there, then it's terrible. But you can mitigate it. You can go back and get some. But at the end of the fight, when it got stuck in his helmet and had to get another one, I was one of the last guys standing. That is one long, scary run. Because you don't have time to look behind you, and you know they're coming. I mean, how many times have you seen somebody going to get a weapon and they get pushed from behind and they eat the list? That is probably one of the worst things I've ever seen. And for me, I'm always cognizant of that. So you're trying to get a weapon, and the funny thing is you'll see guys go and they cut a curve and they grab it as they go by because they don't want to be standing there waiting for somebody to come up like one of us.
Sure thing. Okay, let's proceed with the questions. Artyom, this is going very well for you so far.
Yeah.
Perfect score so far. Brad, you can still pull it back.
Remember the PayPal, man. Remember the PayPal. You got to send it, Artem.
For sure.
Okay, now you should all be able to get this one. Brazil, China, and Turkey all had their first Battle of the Nations together. Where was it? Brad, what do you think?
I'd have to say it would either be Barcelona or Italy.
Which one is it?
I would say probably Barcelona. No, I would say Italy.
Artyom?
It was Barcelona.
It was Barcelona, yes.
I should have went with it.
It's been wonderful to see these three nations who have progressed really well. Still have a lot of development to do in their country, but of course it is going extremely well. Last year, of course, in Smederevo, we saw a record number of 40 nations, and there were a number of four brand new nations. What do you think this means for the future? How many do you think we can see in 2021?
I think it depends on the format. I think that there are many groups that are going to keep going because of the quality of the feed. They're going to watch these events. They're going to get their teams together. The United States team's part of this because we had someone who got an invitation to come and went around and asked us at SCA events to, hey, do you guys want to go do this? And then it kind of spread from that, and we went, and we've been there ever since. I think that is kind of the catalyst. But I will say this. I think that if we go to different countries and as people see us compete in their country, it'll make that sport grow in that country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is also important to go to places that don't have a basis yet. And then we plant that seed there and it grows when we leave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, then let's move on to the next question then. Guys, you really don't want to get this one wrong, all right?
You got
in Barcelona in 2017, one merchant was banned from operating a Battle of the Nations after she physically attacked a female fighter. What nationality was the fighter?
Wow. Never heard that one. That must be, yeah. So, Artem, hopefully you lose your internet for a little bit while Gavin tells me what the answer is.
Artem, what do you think? Take a guess.
Female fighter that was assaulted, huh?
By a merchant.
The merchant was from the historical market? Or
yeah, for the historical market. Yep.
Oh.
And it was a female fighter that was assaulted. Yep. You want to know what country she was from?
Yeah. Take a guess, guys. Have to hurry you. Artyom,
female fighter. Female fighter.
Would be Spain.
Brad?
What do you say? Spain? I'll say Polska. I'll say Poland.
Brad, it's like you don't want to win. It was the United States of America, my man.
What?
There was.
We're all about some drama, my man.
I'm not naming names here, but it was kind of a moment for me because what happened? I saw some shouting going on. I was returning to my commentary box, and all of a sudden, my phone starts going crazy. With like sort out this situation, and I couldn't believe it. What had happened was it seemed a totally unprovoked thing that this merchant actually punched one of the female fighters of the American team, and of course she was she was expelled. She was banned from Battle of the Nations events. It was really something I just couldn't believe. It just took me really by surprise. The thing is, though. You've got to be crazy to do that. Really? Like punching a fighter who has got all her teammates around there, all the other sports people. I mean, that's a death wish. I mean, it was unfortunately one of the more bitter moments of Battle of the Nations. But it was a one-off. Things like that have never happened because there's always been, despite the rivalry between the nations, which I think is a good thing, there have never been any situations like this or really bad blood between people. I don't know, like maybe I'm wrong. What do you think of the spirit of the fighters and the teams at Battle of the Nations? Artem?
I like the comparison within the Olympic Games and especially in the ancient Greece, all wars, they just paused or finished when the Olympic Games started. And I like that the current trends within the Battle of the Nations, we, as the Brett said, we have the angry face inside the fight, but after we have the friendly smile. And it's really good because fight, travel, make friends. It's really the main like cherry on the cake of our sport.
Sure. How do you see it, Brad, the spirit of the fighters and the teams?
Well, I think it's amazing. I think that we make friends. If I want to go anywhere in the world, I can make a couple phone calls and have a place to crash. And I think that's amazing. One thing I would say is I do like the 150 where we start taking the field with other countries. I'd like to see more of that. I always wanted to see the day where we do a random draw where you fight with people from other countries, not just with your team. Sure. I think that would be amazing because it takes away that stigma and it takes away that, well, I don't know them. The only thing that I've seen is sometimes, and the only thing I'd like to point out to people that are watching from the different countries is you can't hold a person a fighter responsible for whatever takes place with their country.
Yeah.
You know, I've had people say, "Oh, your fighter did this." It's like, that has nothing to do with me. This is a very singular journey for me. I've never seen Battle of Nations as a team sport.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people do. Hey, that's your groove. Get down how you want, but that's not me. I go there and I'm responsible for myself. I'm responsible for my harness. I'm responsible for my attitude. I'm responsible for the courtesy that I show to everyone involved, whether it's the announcers, whether it's the med techs, whether it's the other fighters. I'm responsible. I can never be responsible for those other individuals. You know, I'll never forget, I showed up at a fight and I was carrying my harness in because we were going to be later in the day, and someone's like, "Here's who your female team did this, the women did this." And it's like, that is okay. Thanks for the information. That has nothing to do with me. I think that the more time we spend together and the more time we spend together on the field builds those bonds. It was pretty amazing in 150 to look over and see Ilias is over there, and and then he comes to a tournament. Artem, you hear this, right? You need to do this. He comes to a tournament in the U.S. and he and I are on the same field in South Carolina, and we're fighting together on the same five. I think that should be something that we try to do, where we go fight with these different groups. And I don't know if that's just to be done at like Dynamo or other things, or we make a concerted effort to get that done. Where, could you imagine how cool it'd be if you go to a tournament, do a random draw to build your fives? I think it'd be pretty amazing, because I just think how awesome that would be to have a Russian, an American, China's team, or Mexico, and you build a five. And I think it's pretty awesome. I think that lends a lot of the relationship, because it's one thing seeing each other after the events. It's another thing taking the field with them.
Sure thing. Okay, then back to the quiz. Just 3 questions.
I thought the quiz was over. You got to be kidding me here.
Unfortunately, that was your chance to gain some points, but we'll discuss what exactly happened a bit later. Okay, just between us. Anyway, next question though: how many registered fighters did Ukraine send to Battle of the Nations 2019 in Zmederevo?
You got to be kidding me. You guys got something going on here.
You had your chance to get the last question right. I thought you knew it because we even talked about the person. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So, number of registered fighters that Ukraine brought to Battle of the Nations in Zmederevo. Artyom.
Honestly, I do not recall the exact figure.
I didn't think you would.
I'll just take that point.
47.
Brad?
What did he say, 47?
Uh-huh.
I remember talking about how many were there from the biggest countries. It was over 47, I think, for Ukraine. I'm almost positive that they're over 47. It's above 47. Let's just say 49.
Well, that still makes you closer. It is 63. Artyom, shame on you. Ain't nowhere near. That was your chance to get a point there. You stay. Go on.
It's a tricky question. How many registered or how many appeared fighters were in Zmederevo?
That's a very controversial thing to say.
So Artem, I don't know if that argument. So it's a tricky question. How many was on your team? But I got to come up with who got punched by a merchant. I don't know if I'm with you.
Okay then, guys. Next question. The HMBIA head of the tournament committee, Ivan Kuragin, recalls that his first Battle of the Nations in Khotin, the sun was so strong that he was completely burned. Which other Battle of the Nations tournament was famous for being so hot and sunny that it was really difficult to fight in? Where was it?
Warsaw, Poland.
Actually, it was Trogir in Croatia, and as well the Egmort in France. But I believe the hottest one was Trogir because it was the summer.
Yes, it was. In terms of temperature, Trogir, of course, got to the hottest day when it got up to 37 degrees. And of course, it's a very, very hot area of the Mediterranean, Croatia. Guys, what's it like? Brad, you mentioned it before. Artyom, what's it like fighting in that intense heat?
It's for every human being, it's really difficult because we have a lot of armor and clothes on us, and within normal weather conditions, it's hot to fight. But in such hot days, it's extremely difficult. Thanks God that in south of Ukraine, we have a lot of during summer hot tournaments, and so we have some experience. And it's also always a little bit a pity for the northern guys from Scandinavia who faced with such extreme conditions for them.
Brad, how about remind us again what it was like for you fighting in such hot conditions? How did you feel?
Warsaw, Poland was unbelievable. At that time it was our first tournament, so we were all wearing the thickest gambesons and the thickest chouses because we had convinced ourselves that was the only way you're going to get out of this alive. It was a heat wave. I mean, it was unbelievable how hot it was for that tournament. I would like to see later if we get an actual calculation what the temperature was there. The Trogir was a year that we only had 5 individuals go there, because that was when the U.S. was in its thing. So there was only 5 there. So I didn't see how hot that was. But I mean, we all talk about Warsaw, Poland. I'll tell you what it is. If you put harness on, it's pretty funny because as you're getting harnessed up, if someone's helping you do your different things or they're squiring for you, you'll soak them. You haven't fought anything. You haven't done anything. And by the time they're done, you're dripping all over them. It's like, hey, I'm so sorry. But it is what it is. You got to sweat it in. When you take that sun and you take it where it's in the 90s, you can forget about it. You can't keep up on the water. No matter what you do, you can't keep up on the water.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then last question it is. This one's a bit more lighthearted.
Thank
it's a
God.
Pretty difficult question. Okay. What crowd support proposal was not implemented at Battle of the Nations 2016 in Prague? What crowd support proposal was not implemented in Battle of the Nations 2016 in Prague? So it's something to sort of for the crowd, to support the crowd.
Something for the crowd to do or something for us to do?
No, it was a crowd support proposal.
I was in Prague.
Think about what kind of support that the people get, the teams get.
If I'm not mistaken, it was some kind of songs or some musical instruments, some maybe.
Brad?
Crowd support. That's not when they were giving the people in the crowd those big loud horns, was it? Those big
the vuvuzelas.
Yeah, those offensive horns.
Unfortunately, it was neither. The proposal was to include cheerleaders in at Battle of the Nations, and I remember distinctly that I was speaking to our good friend Sergei Tsimbal about it, and he was talking about this idea, and my jaw just dropped as he was telling it because at that point we're moving towards more authenticity and everything like that, and then bang. This idea for cheerleaders came in, and I think the only reason it wasn't implemented was because it would have cost too much, because they would need cheerleaders for every single nation. So I was relieved. For me, it was a relief that they didn't have the cheerleaders. I have to tell you.
Wow, that would have been something.
It would have been quite something. Fortunately, it never happened. But of course, it does kind of affect the authenticity of the event, because it's not just a sports event, it's a sports history event. How important is authenticity to you guys in this sport? I know it's that word, it's authenticity, But of course, it's an integral part of it. Artyom, how important is authenticity?
Before I answer this question, I would like to share my respect to Brett, one of the main idol of authentic armor, and all of his 4 armors that I have seen on Battle of the Nations. They're really perfect. And from the general view, I fully agree with it, because it shaped the picture. We need to have really fascinating and attractive picture for this sport, because the sport is really fascinating. And sometimes when the fighters turn on to the sport direction, they not always considering how it may look like, how it may be historically accurate. Of course, we are not the warriors in the Middle Ages. That is why some differentiations between modern armor and historical armor should appear. So I fully support some balance and compromise between the historical shape of the armor, if it look like pretty good, pretty historical from the 3-4 meters. And if the spectators watch the fight and say that, oh, it's like medieval fighters, medieval warriors, medieval knights, it's good. But not if they say why the booglers fight in the list.
How about you, Brad? What does it mean for you, the historical
Well, you both gave me some amazing compliments about all my armor, so I'll take each one of you and we'll put that towards the quiz and we'll go with a tie. So here's how I look at it. I hear so much about the authenticity, and I have seen authenticity be on some levels one thing and then others. But here's the fact: when I go in for my inspection in Serbia, I walk up. They're smiling. They're literally looking down the line at me, laughing, because they're like, "What's this idiot doing in line?" I walk up there and they go, "Come on, let's go, move along." There's a purpose behind that, though, right? There's a purpose behind that, and I live by the motto: if you wear appropriate harness, then authenticity is not that big of a deal. You look like an orc, they're going to treat you like an orc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think that. We have to recognize that there's a lot of people. When you look at Serbia and all those people were at that fortress who want to take those pictures and have their kids, and they paid money to be there. These people are paying money out of their pocket. In Poland, as far as you could see, there was kids and families. They paid a lot of money to be in there and to watch that. They want to see what it looked like to see knights actually fight and compete in a tournament. They don't want to see, hey, I wear this because it's lighter and I can run, but you look like something from Mordor. You know what I mean? They didn't come to see Lord of the Rings. And I'm going to tell you something else. I try and tell people all the time, when you look at taking a shot of the fights, it should be easy to make posters for the next year. You should have a million different opportunities. But if you look and go through these, you're like, wow, look at that. That guy's got a pair of tennis shoes covered in leather. Scratch that photo, look at this one here. And so I think, we should wear appropriate harness. We should not care about the authenticity as long as it doesn't go overboard. It is tough sometimes to say, hey, I'm going to wear this with this, because you're going off of manuscripts. And there's a lot of margin. There's a lot of discussions on it, this or this. But the fact is, if you put the effort in and you do what you're supposed to do and you go to Battle of Nations, and it is a Super Bowl, it is a World Series, and you dress yourself and harness appropriate, that you won't have any problems. And I think that is something that people need to pick up on. Go to the extreme. Don't go to the least amount. Go to the extreme. Go and show what you're there for. Take it serious.
Sure. Brilliant stuff, guys. Thank you so much for that. So I think quite convincingly, Artyom, you took that quiz. Well done there. Commiserations to Brad, of course. Okay, guys, so we're just about out of time. And I just want to address one more question, or a couple of questions in one, which have been raised in the live stream. So just before we finish, what advice would you give to somebody starting in the sport? Artyom.
The short advice will be just do it. because this sport is like the fairy tale, you know. It brings a lot of traveling, adventures, epic fights, the lifelong friends, and this is something that going for the whole life with you. And I'm really happy that once I've entered in this sport, and I don't want to stop to do it. So just do it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Brad, what would you say?
You know, it's funny because I hear all the time some of the people, and just in some of the live streams I've heard, well, the Americans always talk about nights. The Americans always talk about nights. Well, this isn't just a sport. You're supposed to be an ambassador of this sport. And I think what I would tell people is when you go to these events, your actions reflect on your entire country. So when you're there, act appropriately, show courtesy. You know, it is a big deal. And I've put on tournaments in the United States, numerous large tournaments, ITOC year after year, that had countries from all over the world come in. It's tough. And not everything's going to go right. Not everything's going to be how you want it to be. But, you know, if you don't like it, then go put one on, and then you'll get a different look at it. But I think for new fighters, what I would say is this. You're an ambassador of your country, an ambassador of your team, and your actions reflect on the brother or sister next to you. And the idea about this is you'll be treated as you deserve to be treated by your actions. So when you go to these countries and you're around all of these different fighters, you know, when and Artem, this is about you, when I was in Prague, some of the fighters were new that year. They hadn't seen some of us old guys. And so I'm sitting there and Artem comes up and some of the guys from the other teams, and they're bringing gifts. We're exchanging gifts, which is what we do because that's what this is. And one of the young guys is like, who are all these guys coming up and why are they coming up talking to you? Or who are you? You know, it's kind of funny. It's like, hey, listen, these are relationships I've made over these years that are going to last for the rest of my life. As a new fighter, take the sport. The sport's amazing, but it's these friendships and these relationships you're going to make that stay with you. I mean, are you kidding me? I'm in Illinois on a live broadcast with two of my dear friends from all over the rest of the world, and being watched by other friends around the world. So what I would say is don't miss that opportunity. Don't be that guy that people talk about and say, well, you know, he did this or he was that way. Be the guy that people talk about and say that's an ambassador of this sport. That's a goal you should set yourself.
Absolutely fantastic. Wise words there, both from Brad and Artem. Well, this takes us to the end of the session, guys. It has been an absolute pleasure. We could be talking here all night. It is so wonderful to speak to you both. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to all of your fans and, of course, me. It's really wonderful. We have to do this again sometime. So,
fully agree.
So I really hope that you'll be back into your regular training soon. Of course, we'll be looking forward to hearing about your developments, how your teams are going, and of course, how your nations are going. And I'll tell you, I can't wait to see you again next year at Battle of the Nations in 2021.
I can't wait to see both of you guys.
Excellent. It sounds like a plan.
Perfect. Okay. So everyone, from me, Brad and Artem, it is a very, very good night, and we'll join you again next week for another edition of Battle of the Nations Total Recall. Guys, thank you for watching, and stay tuned until next time. Bye.
Hey, great to see you guys. See you later.
Bye-bye.